If you couldn't see, it's too bad. There was a lot of dancing and amazing things.
Come to the service.
Our theme for 2023 is Living Out Loud. The theme for January is Root and Reboot. The topic for today is the universal voice. Dr. Ernest Holmes shares the spiritual understanding he received by tuning into the universal voice in this passage. This I saw, or else some inner presence made it known to me. The universe is filled with life. The air, the sky, the sea teem with intelligence, with majesty and might. And deep within me, some subtle inner sight beholds and sees, comprehends and knows the all, and answers the divine call to be as one beyond the bounds of time and space, to overcome the bondage of the human race and leap with trust, undaunted, free into the depth of that infinite sea whose calm waters are ready to receive those who in simple faith believe. Let's mindfully affirm together. I answer the divine call and take the leap of faith. Thank you. And now, Reverend Kathleen.
Last year was living everyday wonder. This year is living out loud. Take a moment and contemplate what that means for you to live out loud. What does that look like, feel like, sound like? Because that is our focus for the year, living out loud. When I think about it, I get God bumps. I'm actually getting God bumps right now. And the Living Everyday Wonder, I know, has transformed us, focusing on that for the year. And I can't wait to see what living out loud, focusing on that for the entire year, shows up as each of you individually and as our community collectively. So each January, we go back to the basics of science of mind, the fundamental principles, and take a fresh look. So I invite you to use beginner's mind. You know, that's a term that is often used in the meditation community. Beginner's mind. In other words, rather than come and say, "Well, I already know that," you know, that's kind of an attitude often people have. "Oh, we're going to do the principles of science of mind." Those of you who have been here for a long time, I already know that. Well, I invite you to take that "I already know that" hat off and put on the hat of the beginner's mind, and therefore you'll be more open and maybe catch something that you didn't before, or maybe catch it at a deeper level. I know that's what's happened with me over the years, studying, preparing for these messages, and teaching the classes, is that I find that I go deeper and deeper and deeper and more rooted in the principles in my life. And so I know that that's what's happening with this community as well. So the science of mind, the teachings that we offer, which are based on the book called The Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes, and he actually has written so many other books as well. But the thing that I love about it is it's a universal teaching. The emphasis is on the spiritual truth that there is one mind, one universal mind, one source, one presence, one power, one love, one divine being that is the very source of every single thing on this planet, every one of us, and every single thing on this planet. And we talk about the macrocosm and the microcosm. The macrocosm is just another word for that presence that we call God, Spirit, the one source. And we are the microcosm of the macrocosm. We represent, reflect, when we say we're made in the likeness and image of God, we represent, we reflect all of the qualities of that divine presence: love, peace, joy, harmony, freedom of choice, intelligence, and we are also unlimited. And this is the thing that is mind-blowing for many who are new to this teaching, and really for many of us who've been here for a while, is the awareness that the omnipresence, that means the presence of the entirety of this source, the omnipotence and the omniscience of that one, is right here where we are, each one of us, because it's indivisible, and yet it expresses uniquely and individually, in an individualized way, through each one of us. And we are never, ever disconnected from that source, other than through our thoughts we might think we are. But it's impossible to be separated from that source. So it's always working. And therefore, we are full participants in creation. And therefore, as the creator, so are we. We are constantly creating, either consciously or unconsciously. So we always, there's always a reminder to notice, be conscious of what you're thinking. Now, sometimes negative thoughts arise, and we do, talk about that. But the key is what you do about them, turning them around. When a negative thought arises, turn it around, choose a higher thought. So that is the essence of what we teach. And so each week, we are going to be focusing on certain principles of this entire teaching. And keeping in mind, it not only benefits us to learn these principles, but we always are looking at the bigger picture. It's a benefit for an enrichment for the planet, for everyone that we touch. And because we're all unified in that one presence, it is instantaneously, automatically up-leveling the entire consciousness of humanity. So it's this living out loud idea I love, because it is an acknowledgement, an acceptance, and an awareness that we are making a difference simply by doing our spiritual practice, our meditations, our spiritual mind treatment, which is an affirmative form of prayer, and our visioning. These are the three pillars of science of mind, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. So today we're emphasizing the principle that there is one universal, if there's one presence, and there's one universal voice that sings the one song uniquely in, through, and as each one of us. And the song that it sings is the song of love. Love is the energy of this one universal voice. I love what Ernest Holmes said in The Living of the Science of Mind. There's a chapter in there that talks about there's a broadcast going on. There's a constant broadcast, of that one universal voice going on. And it's up to each one of us to tune in and listen for our own lives. It's also known as the still small voice. That's another term you may have heard for that presence, or guidance. Spiritual guidance, inner wisdom. Those are some other terms for this one universal voice. So today, my focus is going to be on 3 points. The first one is that this universal voice belongs to all people, all humans. That it guides us into new thought, new outlook, ever new versions of ourselves and our life circumstances. And number 3, following it will help us unleash the Christ potential within us. We use the term Christ potential, but you can use the Buddha potential. You can say self-realization, enlightenment, whatever, the true self, the authentic self. It doesn't matter the terminology. But I like the idea of the Christ potential, because we have an example of a being who emanated and expressed what we called the Christ potential, which is Jesus. So Christ potential, releasing that. And that belongs to all alike too. It's already within us. It just needs to be unleashed. So these are some of the keys to living out loud, this universal voice and understanding it. I'd like to begin with the story of Samuel in the Bible. It's a teaching story about a prophet who dedicated his life to this, listening to this universal voice of the divine, of God. He is the one who said to Spirit, "Speak, for your servant is listening." Speak, for your servant is listening. Samuel in Hebrew means instructed of God. I love the metaphysics of these stories, that the names actually have a meaning that's aligned with the story itself. So Samuel means instructed of God. And his mother, Hannah, was one who, before he was born, earnestly petitioned to have a son. She was having trouble bearing children, and so she would go to the temple often, over and over and over again, and listen deeply to the guidance of that universal voice, asking, what is it that she was to do in order to bear a son. And so she finally received the guidance to dedicate him to the priesthood, to being in service to humanity. And so when the child was born, he was born with the faculty of spiritual hearing. And he was mentored by the priest Eli. In Samuel, this spiritual faculty was so quickened. It was like they say at age 2. It was so quickened that his spiritual gift of understanding, spiritual understanding, was easily demonstrated. So as he went through his life, he became known as a great prophet. He was also very blunt. He told people sometimes things they didn't want to hear. But when he received guidance, he followed through. So he's known as one who follows through and has the courage to follow through on that wisdom, using discernment. And so the thing that's important to know about these teaching stories is we don't want to argue whether they actually happened or not. To me, that's not the important point. The important point is that the stories in these sacred texts are not meant to be necessarily the facts, the 100% facts, but they are meant to be teaching stories that give us some very good information about how spiritual principle works. So the one life then, which is who we are, and the universal voice, which is available to all, belongs to every single one of us. And it's abundantly guiding us 24/7. Yes, even in our dreams, we're receiving guidance, and I know many of you know that. So the universal voice is the second point, and newness. And I'd like to begin by telling the story of a seeker who had spent many, many years seeking for the spiritual truth. He traveled far and wide, and finally somebody said to him, "Go to this particular cave, and then when you're in the cave, look for the well and ask the well, what is the spiritual truth?" So this is what he did. He found the cave, went in, found the well, and he said to the well, "What is the spiritual truth?" And the well said, "Go to the village crossroad, and there you shall find what you are seeking." So he was so full of hope. It's like, after all these years, I'm finally going to get the answer. So he heads out to the crossroad, and there he sees 3 stores. One is selling wood, the other one is selling metal, and the other is selling these strings of metal. 3 different. And he looks at that and he said, "What does this have to do with the truth?" the spiritual truth. And he goes back and he demands the well give him the answer. He's feeling like a bit of a fool at this point. And the well says, out deep from the well, you will understand in due time. So indignant, he returns to his journey of seeking. And years go by, and the man becomes older, and he begins to slow down. And he begins to start paying attention to things around him, being more present to what's going on around his life. And so one night he's walking, and there's the sound of a sitar playing. And so he begins to approach the sitar, and the music is so beautiful, and the mastery of the instrument is so amazing that he is spellbound. And so then suddenly he really starts focusing on the sitar. Wood, metal, strings. Begins to contemplate that. He said, well, that's what I saw in all the stores at the crossroad. And he's starting to get excited. And he's saying, okay, let me listen now deeply. And he says, I now understand the message. That we have everything that we need within us. And all we need do is to take a holistic look at the situation or at life and just assemble the parts. And then in the process, we become a newer version of ourselves. And that so beautifully describes the creative process that we talk about, the visioning process in particular, where we listen for a higher vision. And then we ask, how must I grow and change? What must I release? What must I become? Because as we become higher versions of ourselves, more in alignment with that oneness consciousness, then all possibilities become available to us. We can see the possibilities of assembling things in certain ways that serve the greater good. So the universe is ever new and ever expanding, and so are we. We are designed to be that way. And yet our childhood conditioning can sometimes get in the way. And then we find ourselves living the same life over each year instead of from a new perspective, from a higher perspective. So Ernest Holmes writes that there's another way. He said, rather than dwell on the past, we can listen to the voice of spirit for a new way of thinking, a new outlook, and a new idea of our relationships to our environment, the people around us, to ourselves, and to God. So let's take in that newness and just repeat after me, if you would. Today is a new day. Today I align myself with the highest idea of spirit. And I vow to live from that. Each day I begin again. I am born anew. And I am spiraling upward, experiencing life as spirit. All right. So that's about newness, the universal voice and newness. The universal voice and the Christ potential. This is the key, listening to that inner voice, the key. Are you listening? Are you listening even now to the inner voice? Because you can listen to others and to the inner voice. It's the one voice coming through you, through me, through all of those who are sitting around you. And I immediately thought of the song Oh Yeah Hey Ya, and there's a verse in there that says, I am listening to the rhythm. Sharon, you want to sing that for me? I am listening. to the music of the Holy Spirit. Oh, what a sound God is singing. I will listen all day long. I will listen all day long. Beautiful. Yeah, oh yeah, hey, yeah. So take a breath, turn within, and listen in this moment. Become attuned to the rhythmic motions of the spirit. It can be a sound, it can be a felt sense, but that is the sound of the inner voice. You may not hear it, you may not even feel it, but here's the thing, you will know it. There will be a sense of, this is Spirit speaking through me. And when we awaken to that inner voice, and when we begin to listen to that inner voice, we will be as Samuel and the seeker. We will be listening for something that will guide us into a state of understanding and knowing what is ours to do. And also, we will be like Samuel and understand the value of following through, of following it, which sometimes can be a little scary, but following it. And in the process, we then develop and express the fullness of who we are, that Christ potential within us. So our teaching then encourages us to align with that potential by letting the universal voice take the lead, and also reminds us to be conscious of our thoughts and choose a higher thought, since the law of cause and effect is always working. And realizing that our thoughts determine our experience, our beliefs determine our experience. So we are here as community to support each other in this unfolding of the Christ potential in each one of us. We are here not only as community, but we have classes. And I'm going to start another class. The first spiritual practices class did not take place. So I'm going to offer another one on Wednesday mornings from 9:30 to 12, and I'm trusting that will work for more of you on Zoom, and you'll hear the details when I put it out. But these courses are so powerful in making a difference. In a moment, I'm going to actually ask Dr. Ami to share her experience with spiritual principles and practices. So in these classes, we not only study all of the principles, and these are universal principles that Ernest Holmes, he studied the world religions, he studied psychology, he studied the new quantum physics and philosophy, and he looked for the universal principles that ran through all of them. And Ernest Holmes distilled it down to these universal teachings and the three pillars of science of mind. Dan actually made a slide for me on this. The three pillars of the spiritual practices: spiritual mind treatment, meditation, and visioning that we teach in our classes and we use in our community. So take a moment, let us make a commitment to ourselves. A commitment to root more fully into the Christ potential. A commitment to apply the teachings, our spiritual practice. This is a new year, a new opportunity. And so in doing so, you have just committed to unleashing the Christ potential in your life. I'd like to invite you to yawn and stretch. This is a neuroscience technique to help us more fully embody what we want, what we've heard today. Allow the mind to quiet and listen. What is mine to receive and to take into my life today? Just notice what that is. And now I invite you to turn to someone, one or two other people, and share what is yours to receive today. And then if you didn't get something for that, you can ask the person, how do you know that Spirit is speaking to you? You can use either one of those. Oh, there's some really great conversation going on here. I can see a lot of engagement. Yeah, it's good. All right. Okay, let's bring it to completion, please. Thank you.
Okay, Spirit says, be quiet.
Be still and listen. I do. It's really great to see all of you so engaged. It's lovely. So here's the beauty of the inner work that we do. It's the principle as within, so without. And so I'm going to invite you this week to take into your life a greater awareness of the Christ potential in yourself and in others, which means you're allowing that guidance to lead you, and that's allowing love to lead you. So wherever you are, whatever encounter that you make with other people, a crying baby in the store, a homeless person, someone who's grouchy, whatever it is, I'm inviting you to see the Christ potential in them, see the divine in them, and also to practice using the voice of loving kindness. And I'm just applauding Virgie. Virgie on her own came up with that for the newsletter, and that was so powerful. In fact, I'd like to acknowledge Virgie for what she does with that newsletter. It is just amazing. It is just amazing. Virgie for president. There's a whole...
I second.
All right, so my friends, let's take a breath, turn within, and just give thanks for the glory, the magnificence, and the wonder of the divine expressed in, through, and as each one of us, knowing that we are guided and directed into living out loud as we listen to the inner voice, the universal voice within us, and allow it to express through us as that amazing vibration of love and wisdom and understanding. I give my thanks knowing that it is done. I release it to the omni-action of universal law, and so it is. Amen. Lovely, lovely.